So welcome everybody. We're here at the Modern Languages webinar. So we just had a few technical problems to start, but I think we're good to go now. So I'm just going to get this presentation up and then Sarah will talk you through it. Okay, so over to you, Sarah.
Okay, well, hi everybody. We had as Helen said, a few technical problems there getting us linked up to the webinar, and unfortunately my two colleagues can't join us, so I'm going to have to talk us through any questions that you have. We'll try to field the ones who are here already. That's our three students and myself will try and field those questions. We should be okay. All right, now we were going to get you started on the question on the page at the moment, but clearly we haven't had as much time as we'd like to, so I think we're going to just go straight into the information session about studying languages at WQE. That's me, obviously on the left there. I'm teaching German and French. Sylvia, my colleague, my Spanish colleague, teaches clearly Spanish. And Caroline, who both of them hope to be here, also teaches French. Unfortunately, that's not been possible, but you will meet them soon enough, I'm sure. So if we move on to the next slide. That's great, thanks very much. We've got three students here today as well. We've got Emily Hayes, who's going to help us with German. We've got Mira Soldama, who's going to help with Spanish. And we've also got Owen, who's going to help us with French and answer any questions that might come from the floor about those, being a student at WQE as opposed to teaching the subject. So if you've got any questions for student orientated, please keep those open for Emily, Mira and Owen. That would be great. Thank you very much. Okay, what I'm going to do first of all is quickly talk us through the year one topics for the three languages. We're not going to talk through, we're not going to go through the whole 2 years. You'll soon get to hear about the second year when you're here. So just thinking about the first year in German, which is obviously my language, we would start us off with, and we do this in all three languages, so I won't repeat this bit, with a bridging the gap in grammar, okay? And we'll do that for a good 4 to 5 weeks at the beginning of the year. This is to get everybody on the same page. So you all come from loads of different schools and your experience of grammar will have been different. Some of you are bilingual, so you may be fluent in the language, but you may not have really studied the grammar of the language. So what we do during those initial weeks is just make sure everybody has got a really firm basis for grammar, okay, in the language that they've chosen. Now, some of you might be excellent grammaticians, as I call it, and that's great, but it's still good, and especially in the situation that we're in at the moment with having all of you will have pretty much finished your studies in March kind of time. You might have been carrying on in some form or other, but a lot of that grammar is going to need to be polished up before we start anything else. We would then go on to, in German, looking at aspects of German-speaking society, and we look at the changing state of the family, digital world, and youth culture, which includes things like fashion and trends, music, television, very up-to-date things. Okay, now we're looking at those from a German language speaking point of view, not necessarily just your opinions or your family or what you do on your digital with your digital media, but basically what are those aspects of things like in the German speaking countries. Okay, and that's the same for Spanish and French when we get to those ones. So you would find a lot out about Germany, Austria and Switzerland. Then we move on to artistic culture. Oh, if we can just go back a bit, Helen, just one more. Artistic culture in the German-speaking world, and we basically look at festivals and traditions, art and architecture and cultural life in Berlin, past and present. Okay, and we finish off the year one, with doing an analysis of a German film, which is called Das Leben der Anderen. All right, I won't say anything about it right now. If you did the preparation materials that I sent, the taster materials, you would have found out a little bit about that as you did it. Okay, we can have the Spanish ones up now, please, for the year one topics. And again, bridging the gap to start with. And then we look at aspects of Hispanic society, looking at modern and traditional values, particularly in relationship to the family, again, cyberspace and equal rights. And then moving on to, similarly to the German language, artistic culture in the Hispanic world, modern day idols, Spanish regional identity, a lot of that, and cultural heritage or cultural landscape. Now, those are, of course, because the Spanish world is such a huge world. You know, you've got Spain, obviously. Then you've got some Spanish-speaking African countries, a lot of Spanish-speaking South America. So you've got a huge amount to learn there, a huge amount to do with the cultural heritage and the regional identity of Spain and Spanish-speaking countries. And then at the end of the year again, you would study the film Maria. I won't try and pronounce it properly, so some of you will be able to do it. Maria Llena Eres de Gracia. So that's a terrible pronunciation. Spanish is not my subject, but it's again quite a modern contemporary film. And then if we move on to the French topics, please. Thank you. So year 1 topics again, bridging the gap. You're getting the idea. Aspects of French-speaking society would be, again, the changing nature of family, cyber society. So all 3 languages study those 2 bits. And then the place of voluntary work in the French one, followed by artistic culture again. So the same 2 themes, but this time we're looking at a culture which is proud of its heritage. The French-speaking world have loads of aspects of their heritage, their values, which is very important. So you look at the wider French-speaking world. So what used to be colonies, French colonies, in particularly in Africa. You look at Canada as well as a French-speaking area. And then looking at music and cinema. And the cinema one very nicely leads into the film analysis of the French film you'll be studying, which is La Haine. Okay, so that's a brief trip through the French year 1 topics. I've just got a couple of other things to say about how we do things at WQE. So you would have, and a lot of you will know this anyway because you probably came to the open day, but you would also have, in addition to the lessons that you have with your language teacher or teachers, you'd also have an extra hour a week or 70 minutes with our language assistant, okay, or assistants. We've got 4 language assistants. We've got a Spanish one, 2 French ones, and a German one. And that would then give you the chance to practice your spoken Spanish, French, or German a lot. So that by the end of the 2 years that you're with us, you know, we aim obviously to have you as fluent as you can be. And able to go to one of those countries where you've been learning about and you know, sort of interact with the people there. Okay, so that's a really important aspect of the work that we do at WQE when you're doing your language learning. That's in addition to the teaching sessions that you get with Caroline, Sylvia, or myself. We'll just move one more on, please, Helen. Oh, that is in small groups. Yes, you'd have at the most 3 to 4 in your group. Obviously, with the situation that we're in at the moment, we do not know about trips abroad, but in the past we've done trips to Paris, cultural trips to Paris, also a sort of cultural / historical trip to Berlin with language involved in both of those, and we've been planning a trip to Madrid. As I say, that's just you know, for you as becoming year 1 students. Obviously, if we don't manage to get it off the ground this year, you've still got the second year for that to happen in. So hopefully that's given you quite a quick overview, I know, of how we do things, what we do in languages, what you'll be studying when you come to WQE to learn your language. Now, I've got a little activity for you, because I wanted to make this a little bit interactive, even though it's difficult with 3 languages at the same time. So before we go over to question and answer, we should have a screen on the PowerPoint which has a question in your particular language. I'm hoping we might get there with that. Can we go back to the PowerPoint, Helen? Oh, not sure what's happened there. Hi, Helen. Oh, we're there. Fantastic, thank you. Must be some sort of gremlin in the works today. So that's the page that we want you to have a go at in the question and answer. Helen's just trying to get it up slightly larger for us. So obviously you've got a question in French, a question in German, and a question in Spanish there. So whichever language you're doing, and if you're applying to do 2 languages, by all means give 2 different answers. So you've got for the French one. I'm not even going to try and read out the Spanish one. Si tu visites un pays francophone, il y a beaucoup d'attractions touristiques à voir et à visiter. Peux-tu en nommer quelques-unes? Just put into the question and answer as many as you can. We're only going to do it for about a minute, so you can't have too many. Just see what you can do. Es gibt viele Feste und Traditionen im deutschsprachigen Raum. Wie viele kannst du nennen? Zum Beispiel Ostern is the German one. Sylvia, I did see your name pop up. Are you there?
I can read it in Spanish if you want to.
Oh, go on, Caroline. Yeah, could you do that, Caroline? Thank you. I don't want to try that.
Okay. Oh, here we go. She's there. Sylvia, are you going to do it? Okay, I'll do it. Recuerda que el español no se habla solamente en España, sino que en muchos otros países del continente americano, como Cuba, Argentina, Perú, México, Ecuador. ¿Me podrías dar ejemplos de comida del mundo hispano? Por ejemplo, gazpacho.
That sounded lovely. Thank you, Caroline. So if you can just pop your questions in the Q&A just for maybe a minute, I'll have a look and see what you've done. Should have some music on here, shouldn't we, really? Merci beaucoup, Ines. Super. Muy bien, I think is what you say, Sarah. Ah oui, la Tour Eiffel. Super, merci. Keep them coming. Gracias, Naomi. Ostern, Oktoberfest. Wow, ganz viele morgen. Dankeschön. Danke, Yves. Ausgezeichnet. Okay, we've had a good few there. Oh yeah, lovely more coming. La Musée du Louvre, la Tour Eiffel. Super, merci beaucoup. Grazie and danke. I think we'll move on now because we need to have time to do some questions at the end. So if we can have the next, if you've got any more, if you're putting any more in, that's fantastic. Keep them coming. Before we go over to your questions, and hopefully you'll be able to answer some of those questions, recommended page for the summer. Well, one which is the same for all three languages, languagesonline.co.uk. You're probably familiar with that one. Do keep using it over the summer. You've been sent little taster activities from the three teachers, from the three language teachers, which also will have probably some recommendations on there for how you can keep your language going during the summer. Okay, so I would say that we can now move over to questions and answers, Helen, if that's okay. So if you've got a question to any three of the teachers, they're all here now. So Sylvia's here for Spanish, Caroline's here for French, I'm there for German, and then we've got our three students. If you've got any questions which you would like to ask the students about how they've experienced learning languages, please do pop a question into the question and answer. I'll kind of read them out as they come, and whoever's appropriate to answer them, I'll ask them to. Okay, thank you very much for the last little thing there from Brianna. Don't worry about there being silence, we're just waiting for questions. Right. So we've got a question for what exam board do you use for German? That's from Morgan. So Morgan, we use AQA. Okay, we find it's a really excellent exam board. I quite like the subjects that they've chosen to do, the way that they do the exams. So that's the one that we're using. So Sylvia, over to you. Eve's saying, which book will we study in Spanish? Sylvia? I'm not sure if Sylvia's got... Sylvia, we can't hear it very well, so I think I know which one it is. So I'll say what it is, unless Caroline, you want to.
Yes, I can do the story is called Maria Elena Eres de Gracia, and the story roughly is basically the story of a girl in Latin America who is used as a drug mule. So she has to kind of ingest drugs, essentially, to be able to cross the border of the USA. So of course it is kind of based on a true story. It's a very, very good film.
Okay, I'm not sure how clear that was because I couldn't hear it very well. So I'm just relaying what I know about the Spanish, which the film we talked about at the beginning, it takes place in South America, Colombia, and that's the film. But the book that they study in Spanish is actually poetry, believe it or not. So Becca, who is a Spanish poet, and all the students love that because it's something completely different. And Sylvie does it really, really well. And they just, they really get into the kind of poetry and things. So even if you don't particularly like poetry, they still find it an excellent, really good option. So we've got a question from Naomi about the exam board. So yes, AQA for all of them. Owen, I wonder if you could have a go at answering this one if we can get you on. It says, Katie wants to know how much harder is French compared to GCSE, French A-level. Could you answer that one?
Yeah, I'd say in terms of like actually learning like the language, it's not too difficult, but like there is a lot of content compared to GCSE because obviously at GCSE it's kind of more like, oh, in my bag I have a pencil, but whereas like when you get to A level, it's more actually learning about the countries and like what's going on there. So like you do families, you learn about say like how traditional some like North African countries are compared to Canada, which is quite liberal. So it's more, the language itself isn't that much harder, I think. But I'd say in terms of content, there is a lot more, but like it's easy to keep up with. It's not like you'll get lost really easily.
Great, thanks, Erin. I think probably all three of our students would agree that there's a lot more content and that you need to keep on top of it and on top of your grammar learning. I suspect you'd all agree that. Do you think that, Erin?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great, thank you. So do you need to bring any textbooks or anything on the first day? No, just bring yourself and a pen and some paper, okay, basically. That's from Brianna, thank you. Margaret, are there likely to be many students in the German class? Well, we have not unique position, but it was very special in German because we do tend to have quite small classes. So the last few years I've had anything between 5 and 10 students in my German classes at A level, okay, which is actually quite a lot compared to most places in the you'll find in the country. So German goes down to about 1 or 2, but we tend to have on average about 6, right? But it's been anything between 5 and 10 over the last 4 to 5 years that I've taught at WQE. Hello, Holly Even. Il y a combien d'élèves dans chaque classe? It depends on the language. As I've just said, for the German class, tends to be small. From Spanish, we tend to have between 14 and 18 in a year. And in French, it can be anything between a kind of like number about 15 or 16 up to about 21, 22. Okay, so that's the sizes of the class. And that's hopefully answered Uche's question as well. How many people are in the language classes? So as I say, it depends on the language that you're learning. Any other questions? I think I've got to the end of questions that were asked. Anything else for the students? You'd like to learn about how we teach the languages maybe? Yeah, we've got 2 people asking, which book do we study in French? I can answer that question. It's Nous et moi. Okay, so it's a book about, it's not until the 2nd year, but it's a book about a young middle-class French girl who befriends a homeless lady, a young homeless lady, and it's about the relationship between them, what she learns about society, what the homeless person learns about her, and basically their relationship and how they sort of interact with each other and what they learn from each other. Okay, it's a great book. You could buy it if you want to already, and start reading it. We've got a load more questions here. Fantastic. Book we study in German is something called, got 2 people asking that. It's a book called Der Vorleser by Bernhard Schlink. It's basically a book about the sort of the difficulties that German people have coming to terms with the past, I suppose, and talking particularly about obviously the past of the World War II, Nazi Germany and things like that. And it's got a background to it of a sort of like a love affair between a young man and an older German woman. Okay, have I given you anything spicy to think about there? I've got a book recommendations to read over the holidays in French. Caroline, your last answer wasn't that clear, but do you want to have a go at that? Any book recommendations to read over the holidays in French?
Yes, I would say probably La Nuit des Temps by René Barjavel. Did you hear that?
I couldn't hear it very well. I wonder if can you get into the Q&A and type your answer, Caroline?
Yes.
Would that be okay? So it's Ines who's asking that. Any book recommendations to read over the holidays? Do we study all the tenses in French? My goodness me, yes we do. Pretty much all of them, right? We don't do the imperfect subjunctive necessarily, because most people would agree that you don't need to, right? But the other tenses, conditional, future, subjunctive is actually a voice, not a tense. Passive is a voice, not a tense. We look at the past historic, the pluperfect. I said the conditional past, the future perfect. All of those, yes, we do, Alice. Lots and lots of stuff to learn, all right? Uche, we've got what happens in the session to the language assistants. Well, I'm not in them, so I'm going to hand over first of all to Emily and then to Mira to say what happens in your language assistance lesson quite briefly. Emily first, could you give an idea?
We're given a booklet with like cards with the questions that you would have in the German oral exam. And you prepare your answers for it, and then you discuss it with your like language teacher and the other people in the class.
Lovely. And Mira, have you got any? Do you do anything different in the Spanish one?
Yeah, slightly different. This, instead of a booklet, we get individual cards every week. So we're given the card for the following week, and we just prepare the questions and then discuss with the teacher and our other group mates who are in the class as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And James, Owen, have you got anything different which you do in the French one?
Similar to what they do in Spanish, but our French teacher, Delphine, also asks us general questions that we could get asked in the final exam. And then she also asks us, is there anything that like we want extra help with? So sometimes it's like numbers, because numbers in French are like a nightmare. Or like spelling, because like you need to learn the alphabet and how to spell. So it's just stuff like that. Yeah.
Lovely. And then when you get into your second year and you're doing the IRP, which we didn't mention, but that's another aspect you've got to be looking at, is the IRP is the individual research project, which you'll be doing a subject that you are interested in to do with your language, and the assistants work with you quite closely on that one as well in the second year. Okay, and sometimes they'll do like vocab activities or little grammar activities or some games or something just to get you, like language games to get you talking in the session. We've got another question from Sarah. Are there any new grammar rules we'll be learning in A-level Spanish that we've not touched base with in GCSE? Sylvia, I know your speech one wasn't too clear. Do you want to have a go at answering that question? I think probably I can answer it. No, it's not really working, Sylvia. I think I'd say from the point of view of all the languages, you maybe have a go at typing the answer. I mean, but I would say in general, grammar, it's wider and it's deeper than at GCSE. So what you've done at GCSE is a great foundation for what you need to do at A-level, but you will go further with it and you'll go deeper with it as well. Okay, so be prepared for that. I don't know if Sylvia can have a go at typing an answer to that. Sophie, what do we do in a typical Spanish lesson? Mira, I'm going to hand over to you because we can hear you really well. What do you do in a typical Spanish lesson?
Well, generally there's like a starter on the board, and then it's just probably like a bit of a recap of the previous lesson, or a different grammar tense that we've learned, or just something about the topic that we're doing. And then we'll move on to the content that we're learning, or the new tense that we're going to be learning. And then towards the end, we'll recap over what we've done. And then Miss generally would ask us a few questions and some new keywords that we've learnt.
Great, thank you. And we've got the same question for French. And then I'm just going to, because I'm going to preempt anybody asking it for German, so then we'll go over to Emily and see what she gets from a German, typical German lesson. So Owen first for French, if that's okay.
Yeah, so like Mira said, we do like a starter, which is like recap of the next lesson. And then like we can do like a mixture of stuff. Like one thing that I found really helpful, because I'm not very good at listening, is our teacher will read out like a passage from like the textbook, and you have to kind of like write what she said. There's also other stuff, like obviously we'll learn content. Like I remember when we did music, we'd learn about like some of the really important like French musicians. So you do like stuff that's really important, but then you'll also do a lot of varied tasks to help with like all the different skills like writing, listening. So it's really good.
Excellent. And Emily, over to you for German.
So we have a starter as well, and then we'll go into the content, which is either grammar or like one of the topics. And then sometimes we do like listening and reading activities, and then go through those. And like we talk to each other and discuss the topic with each other as well.
Do you discuss that in German or in English, Emily?
German, mostly.
Is the right answer, yes. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. We do a lot of German, a lot of language speaking during the lessons, both in German, French and Spanish. So you're constantly in the language and using it and listening to it and reading it in all those subjects. Eve is asking, what could we do over the summer to prepare for German and Spanish A-levels as well as the taster activities? If you've got an opportunity to talk with people, do so. That would be a fantastic practice for you to do. If you are able to, obviously, well, most of you will have access online, so practice from any grammar websites that you can, or certainly for German, I've sent people what I consider to be an excellent website, which is Deutsche Welle. So that's a really good one to use. I don't know, Caroline, have you got any really good, apart from languages online, websites for Spanish or French?
Right now, off the top of my head, it's not coming in great, like newspapers, like Le Monde, so just reading the news in French is always a really good thing to do, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I would say always just try and, yeah, the internet is fantastic for having websites where you can listen to the news, but slowed down to a kind of like much slower pace, so it's easy. So if you know what's going on in the news in English, in your own language, then yeah, you can understand better when they're talking about it in a different language. And if you can find one like, you know, slowed down news in French, just type it into your browser, find that, or watch some TV, watch some German or French or Spanish Netflix. Anything you can do to keep your language going over the summer is going to be really helpful, Eve. So just, you know, do whatever you can. And if your teacher has sent you any extra things that you could do that. Alfaz is asking, what do you mean by writing content on the book der Vorleser? So I think what you're asking is what do we do on that? So that's going to be one of the things that you write an essay on. So we don't just do writing on the Vorleser, we talk about it, we talk about the themes, we learn about the characters, and then for the actual how you'll be examined is that you'll have to write an essay on the book, on some topic that's come up to do with it. Okay, so don't worry, that's not until year 2. So that, yeah, that's how we'll be paying you for that. And we've got one more question, and I think we'll probably make this one the last one because we have run over. So Ines is asking, which textbooks do we use during the lessons for French? So we use the AQA Caboodle, okay, which you might be familiar with from GCSE. And that's in year 1 and year 2, so it's a different textbook for year 1 to year 2. And we are subscribed to the ebook for that, so you would have that on your device, your tablet or your phone or whatever, and you can use that there. In the lessons we have the actual books which you can use, shared between I was going to say shared between 2, not sure how that's going to work next lesson, but next year, but you know, we will go with it. And then we have also another book, is, well, in German it's called Dynamic Learning, but it's by the publisher Hodder. So the A-level books by Hodder, and we use those. We dip in and out of those, sort of for the point of view of just having extra translations, extra summaries, and things like that to do extra language work. So we don't just use the one text, but we have 2. Okay. And as I say, you'll all have the ebook for Caboodle for yourselves. That's the subscribed. And Sarah, the last question. I did say the last one was the last, but will we watch the film speech language as a class or in our own time? Well, we will encourage you to watch them in your own time, because you will have access to those through through the college sort of video platform. I don't quite know what it is, but eStream anyway. And they're all on eStream. And we will watch parts of the film, certainly in German, we watch parts of the film to back up what we're talking about, what theme or what character we're talking about. Okay. I think that's probably all the questions we'll go for. So if we could go back to the PowerPoint, although it's just one last page. Thank you so much, all of you, for coming along. I do apologise again for the problems we had at the beginning, but thankfully we were able to do it. So merci, danke, gracias in my terrible Spanish accent, and we hope very much to see you in August and have a good and very safe summer. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, thank you all. Bye bye.
Adiós. Bye.